Because I got had homework, but I didn't have.
Okay. Hey, no camera? All right. Good to see you guys. All right, guys. Let's get started. Good to have you back here. New year. Some new people. Welcome. Okay. So first, disclaimer. This is not a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, even though we are in an AA clubhouse. We're using this room. We will pass the basket because we're drinking their coffee and we're using their electric and all that good stuff. So whatever goes in the basket will go to the clubhouse, but it's not an AA meeting, okay? It's a private study. And we're doing the traditions now. Should be maybe 4 or 5 weeks, okay? It might be 5 weeks. I don't think we'll hit 6. But, so, yes.
What happened after today?
What happens after the traditions? Your life gets better.
What are you?
No, I'm not doing the steps anymore. We finished the steps last year after 29 years. And Doug is still
One more
obsessed
second,
with
it'll
that.
kill you.
Yeah. So this is the 30th year that there is no step study. No, this is the year 30, no step. 29 years we did the steps. 1 week at a time. Okay. Does anybody have the capability of making copies? You do? A bunch?
Yeah.
Okay. I've got 3 different things I need you to make copies for, and then next week we could pass them out, okay? I might refer to some of that stuff tonight, but you won't have a copy till next week. All right. So, and if anybody's got a question during this, you guys there can mute yourself, and if you have a question, just unmute yourself. We've got Ireland and England and other people in the house. Welcome. Just unmute yourself and jump in, cut me off and ask a question. Okay. So, if anybody else has a question, just raise your hand and I'll get to you. So when we talk about, we start off with this the same way we started off with the steps, okay? This recovery, unity, and service. This is what the program of recovery is. You know, when you hear people talk about, I love this program, I'm sure they do, but unfortunately, most of them don't have a clue what the program really is that they love. So we want to talk about this for a minute, okay?
I know, I had to get in.
All right, mute yourself there. So recovery is the steps, okay? Unity is the traditions. And service is the concepts. So these are our 36 legacies that are left to us. Recovery, unity, and service, the steps, the traditions, and the concepts. Okay? But what does that really mean? So if we look at it a little closer, recovery and the steps, that's about self. Okay? And unity in the traditions is about God. Service and the concepts is about others. So you have God, self, and others, okay? And this is what the program is really about. So it's about what? When we talk about recovery and the steps and self, this is to learn. This is to love. And this is to serve. To learn, to love, to serve. Okay? And one last thing, when we talk about recovery and the steps and self and to learn, this is about action. You need action to do these steps. And unity, traditions, God, to love, this is about non-action. And as we go through the traditions, you'll understand that. And the service and the concept, others, and to serve, this is about interaction. So this is what the program is about. This is the totality of the program. I'll get out of your way here. So when somebody's talking about, "Well, I love this program," I'm not sure they understand that this is really what we're talking about. This is the whole program. So most people go through years and years and years of their sobriety and they don't understand, they never learned about the concept and service. Some people get into service and they learn about that. And the thing about the traditions, it's kind of funny because I was talking with Terry before the meeting. You know, if you go into any room, any clubhouse, they usually have two things on the walls, don't they? They have the steps and the traditions, equal billing. Right? They're both presented equally on the walls everywhere you go. You never go in and see just the tradition, the steps on the wall. You see both. So there's a message in that. The message is that these are equally important. Okay. So when we're talking about the traditions, we're talking about learning how to survive and then grow and prosper. That's what the traditions are for. Firstly, to survive and then to grow and prosper. Okay. And without unity and harmonious action, we really have nothing. Okay. So we spent, those of you that were here last year, we spent 30 weeks going over this part of the program of recovery. We were here every week for 30 weeks and we went through this, and a lot of you guys sat through it. A lot of you people sat through it online. And that's what we did. This time, we're not going to spend 30 weeks. Don't worry about it. 4 or 5 weeks. But we're only going to talk about this. Okay. The unity part of the program, the traditions, God, learning how to love, and non-action. And we'll talk more about non-action. But so, you know, it says that the traditions are to the group what the steps are to the individual. I think you could just put it on me so I can see. That's okay. Actually, this is the way it'll be recorded. So if you could just put me on here. I'm not sure how you do that. I think you go up here.
I can't see that.
View.
Gotcha.
And that's it. Something like that. Okay, perfect. All right. So the traditions are to the group, what the steps are to the individual. Individually, when we come in here, we're sick people. I mean, I don't think anybody will argue that, right? So collectively, we're a room full of sick people. And it's hard to learn how to love a bunch of sick people, especially when you're one of them. And that's what we have to learn here, how to do this. So the steps are what we do and the traditions are what we don't do. Okay. And if I practice the steps help me protect me from you. That's what happens. If I practice the steps in my life, they'll help me protect me from you. If I practice the traditions in my life, they'll help you be protected from me and my defects of character. And if I know that, and I have to, if I go around with the attitude of trying to protect you from me and my defects, I'm actually practicing the traditions. And the only way I could really do that is to practice the traditions in my life. And when I do that, my life gets better and everybody around me gets better also. So if I'm trying to not act out my defects of character, that's the whole idea. That's the whole thing about me trying to practice traditions in my life. So what we're going to talk about over the next few weeks is we're going to talk about what was the intent of the traditions when they were written. What was the intent for the groups, and also how we can use it in our personal life. Now, some of the traditions may not sound right, putting them in personal aspect of our life, in other words. But most of them you can easily translate, but even if it doesn't sound right in the wording, everything behind it works perfectly if you can practice it in your life. So this is what we're going to try to practice first with the group at home. A home is probably the hardest place to practice any type of recovery, you know, but that's where you want to learn how to change yourself. So that's what we're going to do here. I heard somebody say a long time ago that the steps help me from not killing myself, and the traditions help me not killing you. So, all right, when a bunch of alcoholics get together, there's going to be arguments, going to be disagreements. We all have our own opinion. And if we can leave the old attitudes behind, and we can look at our differences and say different opinion is different knowledge. I don't have to accept your knowledge, but at least if I'm opening to hear it, that's what we're talking about here. Okay. And so let's get together and share the different knowledge and see what happens. Take what you can use from it. So the traditions are a guideline to spirituality. They're guidelines for how to treat people, right? So if the guidelines are how to treat people, they're guidelines to spirituality. All right. So anybody got any quick questions on any of that stuff? All right. Oh, in your 12 and 12. If you go to the forward of your 12 and 12, forward, the third paragraph in the forward to your in the 12 and 12 says AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which if practiced as a way of life can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. So they talk about the steps, right? But the next paragraph says AA's 12 traditions apply to the life of the fellowship itself. They outline the means by which AA maintains its unity and relates itself to the world about it, the way it lives and grows. So how AA lives and grows depends on how you're acting. You know, you may be the only person that somebody that's thinking about getting sober or recovered sees. And if you're the way you're acting is not attractive, you know, we've just lost somebody. All right. So tradition 1 says our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. So one of the things I'm going to be handing out to you guys next week is a checklist. Okay. And it's a group inventory checklist, but it's good for you to use individually too. But anytime years ago, there was a problem with a group in Houston, and they asked me to go down and do a workshop and do an inventory, a group inventory. And I went down there and did a group inventory. Man, they were sick. It was bad. They had like $50,000 in their bank account, and they wouldn't pass any of it up. And you know, we spent a long time talking about all that stuff, and we'll talk about that in these traditions. But if you answer these questions that I'll give you a copy of next week, each one for each tradition, you'll see, you know, you can peg where you're going wrong. So what is the purpose then of the tradition? What is the purpose of our common welfare should come first? Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. So what the message there is that the group is more important than any one individual. Some people won't like to hear that. And let me give you some examples of that. Let's say 5 minutes before let's say the meeting's just getting ready to start, and I'm sitting down and I'm waiting for the meeting to start, and I'm not just another member in the group, right? And somebody I'm sponsoring comes in, and they got this frantic shit going on like normal, right? And I got to talk to you. Can you come inside or can you step outside? And I look at the clock, and there's a minute, the meeting's getting ready to start. I say no. Sit down. When the meeting's over, we'll go and talk. And if they can't deal with that, they could go outside by themselves and do what they have to do. Because the message, if I get up and leave the meeting for this person, what I'm telling them is that they're more important than the group. I'm not telling them that, but that's what I'm showing them. That's what I'm teaching them. So when we sponsor people, we're passing on this program, okay? And it's about God, self, and others. But it's not just about you. And the first tradition is telling me that you're not more important than the group. Now, if you read the literature, it says that the person is closely behind the group, but they're not more important than the group. So I say, sit down, take a deep breath. When the meeting's over, we'll talk. And the message then is that this body right here, right now, is more important than you. And whatever you're going through, you just might hear somebody say something that will help you if you're open to it. Maybe you won't. But either way, you're not going to die in this next hour. Right? So you'll be okay. We'll talk about it after. The group is more important than the individual. So that's our common welfare. Our common welfare comes first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. So you ever think what would happen if you woke up tomorrow morning and there's no more AA anywhere? There used to be an old story about a guy that was in the oil business, and he was in the jungle somewhere, and he was there for months. And when he came out of the jungle, he was a member of AA. And he came out of the jungle, first thing he did when he got back to the airport, he went to the hotel. He went to go to a meeting in this country, and the meeting was closed. He thought, oh, I'll just wait till I get home. And when he got home, he went home, and then he ran to his meeting, and they were closed. And he called somebody and they said, oh, haven't you heard? There's no more AA. AA's finished. There's no more AA anywhere in the world. It's closed. What would you do? So I'd like to say to myself that I would stay sober. But if there's no more AA, I don't know. Certainly the new people can't stay sober. So, and so we need this thing. We need this thing to stay alive. Our personal recovery depends on it. Okay. Now, most individuals cannot recover unless there's a group. So we're responsible to make sure that the group is there and growing and staying. So the group comes before any individual. All right. Anybody got any questions on that? On the intent that when they did this, when they wrote this tradition? So the intent was easy. It was for them. Yes, TJ.
One example would be if it's a step or a topic discussion meeting. I've seen people open the meeting because there's a number they turn it into a first step meeting. And it's my understanding that violates the tradition.
Yeah, and you're right. The proper thing to do is to take a group conscience on the spot. And usually the group conscience unwittingly follows that lead. And we have enough meetings all over the place. Here, there's a lot of men. I got sober in New York. When I got sober in New York, the meeting schedule was bigger than your phone book used to be here. And it didn't matter where I was in New York, wherever I was, within a 2-block radius, on the next half hour, a meeting was starting. So we have enough meetings that we can get a newcomer. If I go to a meeting that's about the 11th step or something, that's what I'm going there for. See, we have we kind of take shit way out into left field, TJ. We talk all the time about the newcomer's the most important person in the room. No, he's not. I am. Fuck, if I'm not the most important person in the room, like it's, you ever been on an airplane and at the beginning the stewardess is showing you if the masks fall, put yours on first before you help somebody else, right? Learn how to breathe first, right? So I got to take care of me first. Now, it's not AA is not a selfish program. It's a selfless program. So, but I don't want to go to a meeting because, newcomers aren't the only ones that suffer. There's people that have sobriety that may be going through some things and they may be at a particular meeting for a particular reason. And to change that meeting because one person came in there with 30 days or 2 weeks or whatever, or 7 days, whatever it is not right. But if they take a quick group conscience, then they're not breaking the tradition. And the tradition is really not, it's most groups have a format or what's the word I'm looking for? A procedure. It's they have their own group conscience of how a meeting should be run.
So that also applies to closed meetings.
Yeah,
Many people open a closed meeting because
yeah.
somebody.
Yeah, it's like a woman's meeting, right? If I walk into a woman's meeting and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is a woman's meeting, you have to go," and I say, "But I have a desire not to drink." Now they have two things they could do. They could tell me, "No, this is a ladies' meeting, you got to go," or they could take a group conscience and open the meeting and allow me there. And then after the meeting, say to me, "Listen, here's the meeting schedule. I'll go over here and, but that's the right thing to do." But up until, because the only requirement for to be in an AA meeting is I have a desire not to drink. Not that I be female, or not that I be a non-smoker. We don't have that problem anymore, but in the Western Club, we used to smoke all the time. When they stopped smoking in the Western Club, I had a resentment for about 2 months. So all of these things are okay until you make somebody leave, because Alcoholics Anonymous should always be all-inclusive and never exclusive. So when we start, there's lawyer meetings, there's doctor meetings, there's nurses meetings, there's men's meetings, gay and lesbian meetings, there's all kinds of meetings because there's all kinds of people in the rooms, right? And they're fine to have those meetings unless you make somebody leave. Years ago, Cindy, I don't remember if you were part of the ladies group, but after the meeting, one of the ladies called me and they said, "What happened? A guy just got out of the treatment center, went to the ladies meeting. Were you there that time?" Yeah. And then you guys threw him out, made him leave. And they called me after the meeting. "Did we do the right thing?" And no, you didn't do the right thing. Yeah, you chased the guy out of the rooms, and the guy just had a desire not to drink.
To be fair, he was.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't say you have to be sober.
I'm kidding.
Wait a minute, a drunk in Alcoholics Anonymous?
Oh my
That's unheard of. That's outrageous.
So just to throw something else in there too, but if the meeting is advertised and it is a closed meeting and you take an immediate group conscience at the beginning of the meeting and open it up, and somebody who is going to a closed meeting intentionally shows up late, they don't know that it has been opened.
Right.
And I just have a little bit of a problem with that. If it is advertised in that way, I don't think a group conscience of people there necessarily. And I don't disagree with the men's meeting, women's meeting, kicking some. I don't think they should kick them out for that. But when it comes to like an open or a closed meeting, I'm a little more stringent with that, because we have group conscience where we give all the members who may not be at that particular meeting the opportunity to vocalize their.
And again, a lot of groups have their own format on how a meeting should be.
Right.
So it all depends, but
Right, they're autonomous.
right or wrong, good or bad, it is what it is. Yeah, it is what it is. If it's a closed meeting, maybe somebody's visiting me from out of this country and it's a female. Or it's not an alcoholic.
Correct.
And, you know, I'm not gonna leave her home alone, so I go to my meeting, which is a closed meeting, right? And I said, she's not, and somebody said, okay, can we open the meeting? And they usually say, yeah. And, you know, if somebody has a problem with that, you know, it's usually the bleeding deacons of the rooms, you know, that has a problem with that. But it happens all the time. But technically speaking, if the group conscience immediately changes it, it's okay.
It was explained to me a long time ago that, and this goes with tradition one, is that we don't bend the meeting to the individual. And
Absolutely.
that individual can simply be asked to qualify themselves. Do you have a desire not to drink today? Yes or no? And that way you don't have to open.
Yeah,
Once they qualify themselves by saying, yes, I have a desire not to drink. they're
yeah.
done.
I 100% agree with that statement, that we don't conform the meetings to a person.
Right.
Why? Because it is tradition. The group is more important than the individual. But
We don't want to run them out.
we don't want to run people away, and there's exceptions to every rule, and you can't have anything written in stone here. So, but I agree with you 100% on that. But it happens, you know, and it happens a lot. To me, if we're on, if you get the wrong chairperson chairing a meeting, there's going to be a lot of stuff that's messed up.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like a lot of what that, the issues
Yeah.
are not a very strong or knowledgeable chairperson and
Yeah, but again, you know, you want to give people, we used to have in our business meeting, we used to ask if somebody wanted to chair the meeting for 2 months, we used to ask them, do you have what it takes to cut somebody off? Because if it's a meeting on step 7 and you're talking about your dishwasher don't work, I don't want to hear it. You know, and if you don't have the ability to cut somebody off and keep the meeting focused on what it's supposed to be on, the topic, I only go to structured meetings, you know, about that. And I don't go to men's meetings. I don't go to men's. If I'm at a convention, I'll go to, they call them men's stags. I go to that. But normally I don't go to men's meeting because it's not just a man's world, even though James Brown thinks different. Yeah, it's not. So, you know, if I can't go to a men's meeting, and I'm not, if that's good, if that's what you like, it's good for you. I don't, but if I have to go to a men's meeting because I can't share something in a regular meeting, I need to share that with my sponsor.
well, and that's true.
I don't need to go to a room where there's no women just because I can't
Yeah,
say something.
But like a man who's showing up to a meeting that's a woman's meeting, maybe the best approach to that isn't necessarily opening the meeting for the man, but having a good, solid man in sobriety who can have a conversation and give them the phone number and set them up with somebody who's more, who's gonna be a sponsor. and
Yeah,
is
but if
gonna
it's
be
a
able
woman
to-
meeting, there's no mans there.
That's
There's
the
no man there.
I was gonna say that the responsibility of the chairperson to make sure that he doesn't leave
Yeah.
a meeting that may not necessarily be appropriate for the group to
Yeah.
have him present.
Yeah, and that kind of thing, you want to open the meeting and you want to let the person stay, and then you want to tell him after the meeting. So now if he comes back the next weekend, you don't open the meeting for him. Because now he's you know, he's doing something, but on the spur of the moment thing, I think it's the right thing is to open the meeting and let the person in it. But you tell them afterwards, this every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, this is a women's meeting. There's plenty of places you can go.
Yeah, we used to have a men's meeting, it was an open meeting, and I swear to God, it was every week or every other week, a woman would crash it, and we always say, you know, it's a men's meeting, you could tell they were startled, like, oh, you see, they just went for the meeting, because there was always a meeting there at 6 o'clock or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Well, it was always open to begin with, but they didn't know it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So anyways, we let them stay, but it just seems like every now and then somebody walk in, they just want to go to a meeting, like you said.
Yeah, well, open meeting is different. Open meeting just means that it's open to non-alcoholics also.
I know it, but what
Yeah.
it was, is a lot of women would just show, you can tell by the look on, them, like, oh, they didn't realize, it.
Yeah.
They just knew there was a meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people, that happens all the time. All right. Be careful now, because they got somebody from England and somebody from Ireland on here, so we got a Brit speaking here now. Go ahead.
What I was gonna say is, it seemed to me over the ones I've been to, that the reason why we kind of gravitate from men's or women's is because of a lack of distraction. And, you know, sometimes if you go to a women's meeting, the language is kind of harsh on us. So we like to go to men's meetings. And, especially the younger guys.
Yeah, all of that stuff is about the third tradition, actually. Yeah,
This, I mean, they're open, we opened it up for a girl last week. We
Yeah.
came in, there wasn't enough ladies in there. It's no big deal.
yeah.
But
Yeah, some people get
I
twisted,
like
but
the
you know,
men's meeting because you're all guys, same as you're all ladies in there, and
Yeah.
some stuff that's easier to share. So,
yeah, whatever works for you.
I'm wrong.
All right, let's talk about how do I use this tradition in my personal life? So this is one of the ones where the wording doesn't mess it up really. Huh? So our common welfare comes first. A healthy relationship depends upon unity. So this would be if I'm looking for the traditions in my home. Yes, you're gonna get a copy of these anyway. This is a traditions as a guide to healthy relationships. This is one of the handouts that they're gonna make for you, but so our common welfare comes first. A healthy relationship depends upon unity. And the same thing for work. And I sponsor a lot of guys and over the years that having problems at work. And I work with them about their job and the traditions. And they're like, there's 2 or 3 of them right on the top of my head that I know for sure. Their job has gotten so much better when they learn to practice the traditions at work. Because at work, it would be our common welfare comes first. A healthy workplace depends upon unity. So I have to remember if I'm in the job, right? So the most important thing is what's the best for this company, you know? And when you look at the 12th tradition, you learn that it's about principles, not personalities, right? There's personalities galore in workplaces, aren't there? And so, but if I look at this, I go, what our common welfare comes first. The company is the most important thing. So how am I acting and how am my defects acting to the detriment or to the asset of this company, you know? And if I'm having a bicker with somebody, bicker with one of the other workers, you know, I just got to apply this stuff that he's a worker too, you know? It gets a little bit different if you're have a little superiority in a position and you know, you have to, people got to work, you know, they got to do their job, but unity and promoting unity is very important in the workplace. And at home, our common welfare comes first. But my family life depends, a healthy relationship depends on our unity, right? So how that works at home, they say is the hardest place to practice all of this stuff. And you can easily see why, right? Because at home, you know, growing up and my kids, they're all old now, but when they were growing up with me, you know, I was the king in my house. You know, I'm Italian, so I was kind of schooled that way. You know, the man is the king, and that's it. And everybody falls under what the you know the man says, and there's no questioning that. You know, and I could look back on that today, and I could say I was a little friggin' warped. You know, but you know, I never hit my kids, and never did that stuff. A great relationship always with my kids. You know, but you know, I was a little warped on the way I did things, but there was no questioning that authority, you know. And even it sounds shitty, but even with my wife, you know, there's no questioning her husband, you know. Doesn't mean we're right. Most of the time we're not right, but that's just the way it was supposed to be. So we thought, right? So if we practice these, so here's some questions, and you'll have this list that you can look at. What exactly is meant by unity? Why is unity so important to healthy relationship? How important is open-mindedness in a relationship? Do you express your thoughts and your feelings to your partner freely? Are you more of a giver or a taker in your relationships? Do you have a balance in your relationships, avoiding extremes? You know, so there's a whole list of the 17 questions to ask yourself here. You'll get a copy of this next week. And this will help you in your personal life. And in your job, you just change it. just change the thing to your job. So the first tradition works where you can just change the group to your home or to your work or whatever. Okay. Anybody got any questions on that? On the first tradition? No? Nobody? All right. So there's a lot more in depth we could go through, but I'm going to give you handouts that you can look at yourself that'll help you. One of the handouts I'm going to give you is just a bunch of questions, and every answer to every question on this page is right here in the 12 and 12. And then some of it even tells you what page. But if you're on a tradition, whatever tradition you're on, the answers are in the page. You don't have to think, make nothing up. If you read the tradition and then answer those questions, fill it out, then you'll have the answers in front of you, something tangible that you can always look at and see. And the other one we're going to give you is this healthy relationship one. And then there's the group inventory, which also works at home. Okay, or on the job. All right, tradition 2. For our group purpose, there was but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. Okay, so what is the intent? What was the intent of this when they wrote this? So here's something that we have to think about, right? You hear about group conscience all the time. Take a group conscience, right? If you've ever been to an AA business meeting, you know how crazy they can get, right? I want to say to you that probably 90% or more of every minute spent in a business meeting is spent something against our tradition. Because if you look at the 5th tradition, there's only one thing we should be discussing in a business meeting. We'll get to that when we get to the 5th tradition. But that's the only thing. So if you're talking about anything other than that in a business meeting, you're off base. Okay, that's why you have committees. You appoint committees to take care of stuff. The committees get together, they come up with something, they bring it back to the business meeting and they get approved. And you don't spend time in there talking about all of these other things. You know, this place needs a paint job, you know, this, but the group conscience is something that is so warped and so crazy. So let me just give you an example. This has probably happened about 10 million times over the years. We're in a business meeting and Doug says, hey, we need to raise some money. We need a dance. Let's have a dance for Valentine's Day. You know, it'd be good for promote unity, and we'll raise some money and have a dance for Valentine's Day. And somebody, a great idea. I second that. It's a good idea. Everybody in favor of that, raise your hand. And everybody raised their hand, and maybe 1 or 2 people don't raise their hand, and everybody else raised their hand. Passes. We're going to have a dance on Friday night for the Valentine's Day. So God has just spoken loud and clearly in the group conscience, right? No, of course not. God will never speak in a group conscience without the minority speaking and discussion about what we're doing. Okay. God never comes through in a group conscience unless there is debate from the minority and discussing that.
Express. It says
Express. So what that is supposed to have a committee, entertainment committee, what, you know, everybody's got different names for the committee, but basically the committee does unity shit, unity committee, you know, yeah, there's all kinds of names for it, but that committee is supposed to be somewhere else talking about, we're going to do a dance for Valentine's Day on this date and this, you know, and then bring it back and get blessed. And you don't spend time in the business meeting talking about all these things that you need to do for this, to make this happen, because that's not the place for it. The only thing you're supposed to do in the business meeting is the 5th tradition. Okay, promoting recovery. And if it's not that, you're off base. You're not supposed to be there doing that. So when Mike, you want to say something?
Safety and a common welfare. Safety is an important issue. Always stress. Develop work. And they go ahead and do the tradition one on the board. And you add alcoholics anonymous. Having the one primary purpose, that is creating essence, alcoholics. It goes in group safety with unit. So if you're having a band, you got this committee on the band ad hoc committee, and they're saying, well, so and so hadn't done it first step, so we can't let them go to our dance. Or if we got fun that you're gonna charge them $5 for it, can't hold you there. So the group conscience is one that are gonna set the rules. Clubhouse and everything where you run the wireless out or whatever. I came in here and I got a credit that going in the women's bathroom. I eventually the group conscience would speak up and say, Mike, gotta quit doing.
Yeah. But what you're referring to is the fifth tradition, what we're talking about. That's our single purpose is to carry the message, but we'll get to that in a minute. So we're talking about, for our group purpose, there's only one primary, one ultimate authority, and it's the loving God, right? As he expresses himself in our group conscience. So we just talked about the importance of the conscience of the group being a well-informed conscience. You know, and that's the thing. If there's no discussion, nobody's really informed on either end of that. Years and years ago, when they first started with cell phones, Cindy, you might remember this. When they first started with you remember this? You know what I'm gonna say. When they first started with cell phones, somebody in the business meeting wanted to change the format to make it address shut your phone off in the meeting, which is yeah,
Yes.
which is pretty common. So I mean, today it's pretty common, but it was very unusual back then because it was really pages, right? And then they went to cell phone. And so I raised my hand and I said, well, I'd like to make a motion that, because I said, why are we talking about this? And they said, well, when somebody's phone goes off, it disturbs me in the meeting. And I said, well, I'd like to make a motion that nobody's allowed to wear flip-flops in the meeting. And the guy said, flip-flops, whoever's chairing the meeting said, flip-flops, that's ridiculous. I said, well, why is my idea ridiculous and his isn't? If you go to get coffee during the meeting with your flip-flops, that disturbs me. Of course, I was being facetious, but I said, that disturbs me. You see, here's the problem when we start talking about things other than what we're supposed to be talking about. You're okay with his opinion. You're not okay with my opinion. And now we're dividing the group instead of uniting the group. I said, we're not supposed to be talking about none of this shit. If I sponsor you, your phone ain't going off in the meeting.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
she made us put the phone in the car, and I didn't have a car, so she's like, well, leave it in my car.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I never take my phone into a meeting. I'm just not that important that for that hour, I gotta be disturbed. And if I sponsor you, you're never taking your phone into the meeting either. So it's a non-issue to me. the business meeting? No, we're supposed to be talking about how we're gonna carry this message. Not a ringing phone disturbs me. And at the same time, my flip-flops don't disturb you. And my idea is silly, but his isn't. You see how divisive that is?
Yep.
That was my point. I wear flip-flops too. I don't care. If you have flip-flops on, I'm just making a point. So when we talk about a loving God, so it has to be an informed conscience. We have to know. So, and nothing has to be done right now. So if we said, let's have a dance in February, everybody okay with that, but two people didn't raise their hand. The chairperson is supposed to say, is anybody opposed to this? And would you like to tell us why you're opposed to this? And some people don't want to speak up because they're way outnumbered. And then, instead of rushing the vote through, you should say, you know what? Let's table this to next week. And that'll give you the opportunity to come here next week and put down why you don't think it's a good idea, or we shouldn't do it. And some people will think it's not a good idea because it isn't the proper place in a business meeting to be talking about it. It's not a proper place to be talking about how we can fix the building up, how we can get fundraise, and how we can the only purpose of a business meeting for a group is to be how we carry the message. Well, and that's what the fifth tradition says. We're not there yet, but so going back to the loving God, our leaders are but trusted servants. So we trust our leaders to listen to the entire conscience of the group, not just the ones that got big mouths and talk a little more. Let everybody speak their piece, okay? And that, see, all of these things, these lessons that we've got is why Alcoholics Anonymous has lasted all these years. You know, I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the Washingtonians.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the Oxford group, right? And the primarily the Washingtonians, it was a long time ago, and they had about 500,000 recovering alcoholics. This is back in the 1850s or something like that. They had like 500,000. That's a lot of friggin' people back in those days. But then they started giving the platform to politicians and stuff, and they got off the track. And the Oxford group did the same thing. Both of these organizations thought they had found a cure for alcoholism. And they somewhat did, but they had no guiding principles to keep them in check. And Alcoholics Anonymous came along and they put these guiding principles in place to keep them in check. So we're not going to let you talk about, we're not going to bring a speaker in that's running for congressman. We need an alcoholic in here. And if that congressman is a recovering alcoholic, he needs to come in here and talk about alcoholism, not politics, and we don't allow that stuff in here. And that's why we have sobriety. And only in the conscience of a group, a well-informed group, does a loving God speak in there.
Like we forgot how hard it is to earn the trust of an alcoholic.
Yeah, it seems that way sometimes. All right, so in my personal life, I'm going to say for our family or our relationship purpose, there's but one ultimate authority. No, it's not me. A loving God as he may express himself in our informed family conscious. Each partner is God's trusted servant, never governs.
Can you say that one?
Yeah, and you'll get a copy of this next week. But for our family or relationship purpose, there is but one authority, a loving God as he expresses himself in our informed family conscious. Each partner is God's trusted servant, neither governs. So, I just shared a little bit about how I was growing up and, before I got sober. And this is completely different than what I just shared with you, right? It's completely different. So we got to learn, listen, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we get to become who we'd like to be by first understanding who we don't want to be. That's what we do here in AA. We understand who we don't want to be. And from there, you people can teach me how to have a new life. You know, if I have a good, healthy group that I'm a member of and good, solid people around me in recovery. I just was going through pictures the other day and I posted something on my Facebook. There's a picture of 7 of us from a convention like 21 or 22 years ago in Europe that they brought all of us out from this, all of us from the States, and they brought all of us out to speak there at this convention. Mickey Bush, me, there was a bunch of guys in that picture. And I posted it because I thought, wow, this is a cool picture. There's 7 of us. It was like 21 years ago. We're all still alive and we're all still sober. And I was the youngest one. I only had like 10 or 11 years sober at the time. Everybody else had more time than me. And it was a pretty cool thing. I got a ton of, people that appreciated that, especially the guys that were in the picture. All right, so how would this affect? How do I apply this second tradition to my job? Well, there's one ultimate authority, that's a loving God, but there's a boss that owns the company. Not to say that this boss is a loving God, but this boss is the Alpha and the Omega. This guy signs the check. So how he wants the company run is how I should follow that. I may need God to help me deal with the people around us so I can do, again, the first tradition. What's the best thing for the company, right? If I focus on what's the best thing for this company, and if I don't like the company and I don't like being there, go get another fucking job. But don't sabotage the company you work at because you're bitter. Change your attitude. Or get another place, go someplace else to work. So, because my main thing, tradition 1 for work is what's the best thing for the company. Tradition 2 for work is how can I use this loving God in the conscience of what the rules are in this workplace to help me conform to it as best I can. And at home, how can I use this loving God in a discussion with my partner? And, how do you feel about that? Listen, before I got sober, I never asked a woman how she felt about something. There was no need to. This is what we're doing, and that's it. But, we learn and we change and we grow, and that's what recovery is about. So, so anybody got any questions on that?
So, with the job though, because I kind of look at my job, God provided that job. And I kind of look at my boss as a trusted servant. Because I don't want to not question or challenge in that situation. So it's not like I'm a servant to that boss.
Yeah.
I should be able to challenge. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. If you're doing a job and you think that there might be a better way to do it. See, I'm an employer and I've been an employer for many, many, many years. And when somebody works for me, I tell them this is what I want done. And this is how I want you to do it. And then when I catch them not doing that, I say to them, listen, if you think you're having a better idea that you're doing this now, I've been doing this 30 years and you're doing this for 3 weeks, but you got a better idea, I'll listen to it. But this is how I want you to do it. If you do it the way I tell you to do it and it comes out wrong or bad, I can't blame you. But if you don't do it the way I tell you and it comes out wrong or bad, you're fired. Now, how do you want to do it? I go, I'm going to do it your way. Okay. Right. So if I'm paying you, I want you to do it my way. If you have a better idea, I'm open to it. But, you'd be surprised that Deb, she's not here, but she used to work for me. When she started working for me, I said, I think you read the sign wrong. She said, what sign? I said, the sign said help wanted, not boss wanted. You answered the sign that said help wanted.
There are certain jobs.
Yeah.
That, yes, you have to follow what.
Yeah.
But there are certain jobs.
But there are jobs, that you might, because you're under, you're there doing it, you might have something better. And it might be not what protocol is. And sure, if your boss has got any brains, he'd be glad to listen to it and press change and rearrange it. Nothing's in rock, nothing's in stone. But, mine is the food business, right? So if I tell you, this is how I want you to cook something, it's gonna come out the way it's supposed to come out. If you start doing your shit to it, now you're messing up my recipe, So that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but certainly, like my daughter has a job that she travels all around the country for. She works for New York Life Insurance,
Mhm.
and she audits the companies,
Right.
the insurance companies, and she's coming here in July to audit the big company here in Oklahoma. And she's the one, and she goes through all their books and stuff, and of course, New York Life is a huge company, right? They have all these umbrellas under them, but she does things her way, and the job gets done, and they love her.
Mhm.
But she ain't following no protocol. She ain't doing what she's supposed to do, but she does a good job, and she keeps getting promoted, and she's been there for years. But because some of these big corporations, they just become stupid. They get so big, and so there was a Latin phrase, "Rumuit sui," and that means that it was written for the Roman Empire. It collapsed from its own massiveness, right? And that's what happens to some of these companies. I just switched from T-Mobile after 15 years 2 weeks ago to AT&T. They lost a customer that's giving them $200-300 a month because they were stuck on a $5.95 fee that they wanted me to pay. Now, that company is so big and so massive that person I was talking to can't go off of the paper that they're reading. And because of that, because of $6 a month, they lost $250 a month. But it don't matter to them. But, so those things happen. I kind of got way off course here. All right. Sure, because we got 5 minutes. I don't want to go into the third tradition.
When we were talking, or when you were talking about that gentleman who showed up at the women's meeting, if a guy's drunk coming in and there's a bunch of women, there's a safety issue.
I think
It's my first thought.
I think Cindy is mistaken. I don't remember the guy being drunk. In fact, he just left the what's that place on off of Classy? TRC. He just left TRC that morning. Huh? No, of course. No, but I mean, he just left there and he came right to the meeting. I don't remember anybody saying he was drunk, but it was a guy, and there was a women's meeting.
I got a side note for you on tradition two.
Okay.
Tradition two, Longhorn is the only tradition that's quoted in.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Yeah, because what's it about? It's about listening to everybody's, and that's the way that God will speak.
One thing that came to mind was, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, further into the traditions, but the upside down nature and structure of AA being kind of the Atlantic Triangle, but also understanding that the May Club and the Northside Foundation are not Alcoholics Anonymous, and that we're talking about an individual meeting versus a clubhouse so you have different levels of meetings and different levels of business meetings and different levels of,
Yes.
so
Yeah, but and the way it's set up is perfect, because like the foundation that runs the May Club and the Western Club and all those things, all they're doing is renting space. They own the building and they're renting space. So years ago in the Western Club, I've been going Sunday morning for many, many, many years. And years ago, they decided to not smoke in the Sunday meeting anymore. But that wasn't, you see, and I got upset because my argument was, you don't have the right to say this. I have a desire not to drink. I don't have to be a non-smoker. And what they wound up doing was going to the foundation, and the foundation making the place a non-smoking building. And now they have the right to tell you you can't smoke now, because we're using the facility. We cooperate. We don't associate. We cooperate with institutions and other people. So if the landlord says this is a no smoking building and the foundation becomes the landlord in this case, then you can't smoke in there. But if the group says, now you can't smoke in here because 3 people don't like to smoke, that's a different issue. But yeah. Well, good questions, guys. Great. We're out of time and we'll pick up next week, same time, same channel. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Danny.
Appreciate you guys. See you next